The 2026 Michigan Senate race could be one of the most hotly contested races in the 2026 Senate cycle. Well, why is this? Because a new poll out today has Mike Rogers ahead of all three of the major candidates on the Democratic side for this Michigan Senate seat. Of course, we have a long time to go until this race in November, and ultimately a Senate seat has not went to the Republican Party in Michigan for a number of years. If we go back and look, it has not, a Republican has not won the state of Michigan on the Senate level since 1994. So a long time since that has happened. But the candidate to seemingly get the closest in recent history, at least, was in 2024 when Mike Rogers ran against now Senator Slotkin, when Senator Slotkin only won by less than half a percentage point, by 0.34 percentage points in 2024. But keep in mind, President Donald Trump was on the ballot in 2024, and it was a totally different environment than it is likely going to be in 2026. Of course, we have, like I said, a number of months to go, but it seemingly is interesting to see the fact that Mike Rogers is performing a lot better than maybe multiple people expected in a cycle like 2026, when so many have expected this to be a Democratic wave year. So with that, let's talk about who the best candidate for Democrats is heading into this 2026 race for the Senate seat, and how it's going to be affected depending on who the candidate is. So let's start by talking about Abdul El-Sayed, who in a recent poll, keep in mind all three polls between Haley Stevens, McMorrow, and El-Sayed all have all been conducted by the same pollster, and that was released, I think, as of today. It's when I first seen it. So with this in mind, Mike Rogers is up to El-Sayed by 5 percentage points compared to Stevens by 2 and McMorrow by 2 percentage points. Now, I also had looked into this. Let's see, on, give me one moment. So if we go to the general election tab here, we see that these polls actually also had 2 polls conducted for each one. So if we go up and we see, for example, Haley Stevens versus Rogers, the same poll that we were looking at on the New York Times page, that had Mike Rogers, up by 2 points to Haley Stevens. There is another poll within that one that has Haley Stevens tied with Mike Rogers. So if we also go down to Abdul El-Sayed, we see, let's see. Yes, so we see similarly 45 to 40 on one poll and 45 to 42 on the other. So seemingly the second poll seems to be closer than the first one. And then against Mallory McMorrow, we see that Mike Rogers is ahead by 2 points on the first poll and tied on the second poll. So with all of that in mind, sorry for a little bit of confusion there, who is the best candidate for Democrats to run in this race for the 2026 midterms? Well, I would argue that it has to be either Haley Stevens or Mallory McMorrow. It appears, at least poll-wise, that Abdul El-Sayed would not perform as well as either of these two candidates in a general election. Abdul El-Sayed even losing that second poll by 3 percentage points. That's more favorable to Democrats than the first one. It's, of course, the same pollster, just a different group polling, something of the sort. So, with that in mind, like I said again, it appears that Mike Rogers would face the hardest time running against someone like Mallory McMorrow or Haley Stevens versus Abdul El-Sayed, who appears to be really struggling to win over voters on a general election basis, at least from a polling standpoint. So, with this in mind, let's look at not only how this race could shape out, but again, we talked about the history of this and Mike Rogers running just a year and a half ago for not this same seat, but against now Senator Slotkin, and winning by such a narrow margin. What does that mean heading into 2026? Well, the simple answer is not much. Of course, Mike Rogers, a very strong candidate, proven that proving that in 2024, being able to come so close to winning, but ultimately didn't win. And the thing about it is that 2026 is going to be so much different than 2024 that I still think that Mike Rogers has the hard time winning this race. I think that, of course, if Democrats choose someone like Abdullah said, that's going to become increasingly harder for them to win. But ultimately, it's still the Democrats' race to lose. So if we go over to polling the Democratic primary race, we can see that in recent polling, so May 1st through the 7th, Mitchell Research and Communications, El-Said was up by 10 percentage points, and then a poll from the 17th to through the 19th of April had Stevens up by 2. That was 2 El-Said, and then an Emerson College poll towards mid-April had El-Said and McMorrow at dead even. So certainly a very interesting race on the Democratic side as well. So of course, Democrats really need the hope that they can nominate someone like McMorrow, who would be, according to polling at least, a better candidate to run in that general election, who could actually perform pretty well and ultimately really benefit from that, compared to Abdullah Said, who is struggling, like I've said throughout this video, in a general election environment. Seems to be a much harder race for someone like him to win in. So with this in mind, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen on this Democratic primary stage? Do you think that Haley Stevens or Mallory McMorrow wins and that it's going to help Democrats? Do you believe that Abdullah Said wins? And do you believe that that hurts Democrats or helps Democrats? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I love reading through your thoughts, getting differences in opinions, and seeing where you guys think this lays as well. So with all of that said, thank you guys again so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Check out all of the links in the description box below. I have Twitter, or X as it is now, TikTok, Instagram, the whole 9 yards. We're really trying to revamp and start posting on those as well, but slowly but surely trying to get those up and running more frequently. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to check out some other videos on the left, and we will see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys.